Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, we are off and running and ahead of schedule, and I'll do my best to keep us there because there's some really smart, intelligent, gifted people going to speak to us today, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say. It's our 7th Cyber Summit. Pretty excited about that. The room gets more full every year, and I've never gone through one of these where I didn't sit right about there or right about there and have an epiphany moment that, man, I'm missing something, I need to do something different. I'm very proud of what Wisconsin has done over these last 7 years. It's been pretty extraordinary. It does go back 7 years as the National Governors Association had an event where they talked about the responsibilities that governors have across the 50 states and the 6 territories, and of course the District of Columbia. You have leaders that you elect, and understanding what cyber is. And I'm still not sure I understand what cyber is, but I know that we all understand it's important, even if we can't define it, right? And it's a big deal, a good place to get started. I mentioned the governors have particular roles. They're important roles. The average American in our country, the average citizen in Wisconsin, probably isn't spending too much time thinking about cyber until something bad happens. And then they reasonably say, well, why didn't you do something to stop that? And those are tough questions for elected officials to ask, and so they rely on all of us, whether you're working for the state or local official, or if you're a vendor in our state or whatever it might be. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can as a whole of government, not just the state, federal government, locals, partnering with the FBI, DHS. We've done a lot. We've come a long way. I want to thank some of the folks in the room. You'll hear from them later on, but lost the visual areas. David Cadgell's in the room, our CIO. Bill Nash, our CISO. I've got some of my colleagues from the National Guard, General O'Donoghue and General Eben. I've got, I thought I had somebody else in my sights, but I think I lost them, so I won't mention a few more names. But, you know, in the last 7 years, while we haven't solved everything, because I don't think you ever solve everything in cyber, it's always sort of a journey you're on. But Wisconsin, not because of me, but Wisconsin has come a long way, and I am confident we have made things better here in the state of Wisconsin because of all that you've done and because of the leaders that I just highlighted in different ways, and including other agencies like the fusion centers in our state who work so hard with us, developing cyber liaison programs and things that make us more effective when it comes to the cyber world we live in. There's a lot of goodness that's going on in the state of Wisconsin, but it doesn't mean we're not facing risks. There are all kinds of challenges facing us, so I thought I'd kind of walk through. I've got what I call my scrapbook here. Please, I think I have a clicker here, I'll just use that. So I pick pictures to try and highlight what I'd like to talk about. Hopefully I can use that to good effect. I will tell you that I have the privilege of being Homeland Security Advisor, and I think DHS calls it the Senior State Cyber Official, which is kind of laughable because I don't speak Dolphin. I'm not very good at cyber. I know it's important, but I really got to rely on smart people in the room who know what they're doing. But I do learn something every day, and I find humor in cyber. I really do. I used to be impressed when texting became sort of the thing. I know it's still popular now, and people would shorten the words like LOL, right? I thought, you know, okay, so it took me a while to figure that out. LOL is laugh out loud, I got it. It's gone to the next iteration now as humans because people say that now. I'll be talking to somebody and you share a story and someone says, oh, LOL, and I think, wow, you know, it's gone full circle. We texted those words and now we're talking those words. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but I find this all the time. It's a little bit maddening for me because I have a pretty busy schedule and I'm always trying to get somewhere. And I have found on the road that people in front of me who like to text will actually slow down. They're looking to catch a light. so that they can stop at a light and then do some texting when they sit there. So sometimes, you know, the speed limit might be 40 miles an hour. I'm trying to do 45, and the guy in front of me is kind of slowing down to 43, 42, 38, 35, and it just drives me a little bit crazy. And then, I don't have any kids, but I have a ton of nieces and nephews, and connecting with my nieces and nephews is a bit of a challenge for me. So I was on a vacation, my wife and I were on a vacation, and my niece at the time, she's about 12 years old, and it was a couple of years ago, and I was talking to her, trying to impart knowledge, right? That's what uncles do, we impart knowledge, right? We have all this wisdom we want to share. And she's looking at me, and she finally taps my forehead. And I just looked at her, I said, well, what are you doing? And she said, well, I know it doesn't always work, but when I'm on the internet, if I tap the screen, it will tell me how long this is going to go without able to edit. And I just stopped and kind of smiled and said, okay. So same vacation, a couple of days later, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table and I get a text. And it's from my niece. And it says, Uncle Don, I'm in the bathroom. There's a moth on the wall. Can you come take care of it? And I didn't say anything. I just waited. And a couple of minutes later, Uncle Don, I'm really scared. Didn't say anything. Third one comes, Uncle Don, I'm gonna cry. And I texted back, Uncle Don is dead. You're next. Sign the moth. And later on, we were sitting around the table as she tried to explain why this young 12-year-old ran half naked down the hall screaming at the top of her lungs. She's trying to tell the story, and I had the opportunity to reach up and pop her on the forehead to see how long the conversation was going to go. And we're great friends today, so I've made that connection. So I find great humor in cyber. I thought what I would do was kind of go back through the last year, looking through the rearview mirror. 2018 has been a pretty amazing year for Wisconsin. A lot of good things have happened, a lot more to do. I'll start with elections. It's nice that it's a bear because the Packers just beat the Bears. That's a good thing. But of course, here we're talking about the Russian bear, right? And in 2018, we had a midterm election. And we really had a really, what I thought was exceptional team effort getting ready for that election and trying to make sure that the one thing that matters in an election, that when a citizen of our state walked into that booth and made his or her choice for whatever position we're talking about, that their vote counted and that whoever won the election got credit for winning the election. And that used to be something we took for granted, but it's not something we can take for granted anymore. And I don't want to steal a lot of thunder here because we do have Megan Wolf in the room and she's going to talk later about elections. But I will tell you, this young lady is doing an awesome job for us, leading on behalf of the Wisconsin Election Commission, that preparation. And as we should, every agency and every group that can bring something to support her and the commission's effort is doing that. And in 2018, we had our cyber response teams ready to respond. The governor allowed us to mobilize the National Guard, cyber experts in case something happened. Nothing did, that's good, but they were ready. We talked about what else could we do. We had a group of public affairs folks ready at the commission so that if something did go wrong on election night, we had a lot of resources there willing and able to support Megan and her team, because in that kind of a fight when you're trying to do an election and answer questions of the press, that would be very helpful. We found out that one of the phone lines they had wasn't always manned with a human. You had a lot of taking a message and getting back, which works most of the year, but not necessarily when an election's actually going on. So we made sure that there was an actual human answering the phone for a couple of days, so if something went wrong, somebody would answer the phone and get it to the right person and try to mitigate whatever was going on in the election. And we did exercising with the Department of Homeland Security, and we did exercising amongst ourselves. And we tried to make things better. Not me, but us in support of Wisconsin Elections Commission. Very important. The election went off great. I'd love to tell you that's the end of the story, but we got one coming up in 2020. And if 18 was going to be tough, and we thought it might be tough, 2020 is going to be a real big deal, right? Because you got a presidential election, the entire House turns over again, 1/3 of the Senate. Big deal in the state of Wisconsin. So, while we're doing good things with our partners in elections, we have a lot more to do. But Megan, I want to just thank you publicly for all you're doing. You're doing an awesome job. And I look forward to hearing more. I don't want to take any more of your thunder here. I want to talk about CISA. So, Department of Homeland Security changed one of their big agencies into CISA. CISA stands for the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. This was a brilliant idea. It took a long time to get this through Congress. I don't know why, but it did. But Congress eventually said, we're going to do this. And this agency is sort of the risk manager for the country. They've got specific responsibilities in terms of comprehensive cyber protection, infrastructure resilience. Now that's partnership, right? Because the federal government generally doesn't own the infrastructure, but they understand how important it is. So they're working hard so that all the infrastructure in the country that we rely on, and there's 16 of them that you see right here on the right-hand side, to the extent that we can, we try and make them stronger, better, more resilient. They worry about emergency communications. When everything fails, what is going to be the way we communicate with the public? That is, if you're like my niece, much more dependent on that phone than I ever was when I was 12 years old, so I didn't have a phone, right? Two different generations, two different approaches. They are particularly focused on protecting the .gov domain, and they're acutely interested and trying very hard, and I think doing a great job in trying to collaborate on the .com domain. This was a big shift for DHS, and I think it's a powerful shift at the Department of Homeland Security. It gives them a much better method of partnering with us and allowing us to build better capacity and better capability across the country and in states like Wisconsin. Now, CISA is led by a guy named Chris Krebs, a friend of mine. You know, we're not buddies, we didn't grow up together, but I consider him a friend because I've had a chance to work with him. And he's a really smart guy. He's doing a great job running this particular agency. They just had a cyber summit of their own, and he had a chance to make a few comments. And I thought a few of his comments were worth sharing with you. So these are paraphrased from Chris Krebs. But he talked about, you know, the world is increasingly networked. It's not going to change. It's having acute impacts on Homeland Security, and it's resulting in a landscape where silos or sector-specific approaches, despite how effective they may have been in the past, are not going to be successful now and in the future. We must partner together. It's not a question if we want to work with the federal government. It would be stupid not to. It's not a question if the state wants to work with locals. It would be stupid not to. It's not a question if we want to rely on industry with all the talent that's in industry. It would be stupid not to, and we will fail. We must approach this as a whole of government approach. I think he's on the right track. He also says something that I think we need to hear more of, and I give great credit for this. He said we need to stop the fear. Now, there are real challenges when it comes to cyber. There's no doubt about it, and we need to prepare for what might be a bad night in America, and I'm an advocate of that, whether the grid goes down or whatever it may be. But it can't just be something we're fearful of. There's a lot of goodness that comes from this cyber world that is enveloping and expanding and driving on and providing enormous efficiencies for our industries and our people. And of course we want that. And at the same time we have to recognize that we have to partner together in order to meet the threats that come with that expanding universe and be prepared as a nation. And I think with folks like Chris Krebs and his wonderful team, and they really are a wonderful team. If you don't know somebody at DHS, I hope that you will take the time to either go see the end kick or go see what they're about, because they really are doing a great job. and they're focused on helping us do our job. So I appreciate that. He also talked about CISA's 5 areas of focus. I think we'll hear more about this later, but just to highlight them for you, just so you know what's on their mind, and I think they're right to have these issues at the top. Number 1, China. Nobody's pretending anymore that we can't name the country. China is a challenge with the way they approach certain things. In particular, our supply chain, and in particular, as 5G comes online. These are issues. It's not the end of the world, but they're things the country has to deal with, and they're dealing with. Number 2, soft target security. That certainly affects us here in Wisconsin. Number 3, government network protection. I mentioned that, the .gov domain. Number 4, SCADA systems or industrial controls, very important. And number 5, we just touched on it, election security. And one of the ways they're approaching these 5 lanes of effort is with the National Risk Management Center. This is brand new. It's an evolution of DHS's cyber initiatives. It's aimed at planning, analysis, and collaboration. I think that's perfect. Planning, analysis, and collaboration to identify and address the most significant risks that we're facing in the cyber realm. So what should you think? You should think critical infrastructure. You should think critical infrastructure functions, the things that we rely on, if it's fresh water or sewage systems working, or power that's reliable and uninterruptible, those kinds of things. And then, supply chain, pipelines, elections. Obviously, I think they're on the right track. And just to give you an idea, although it's kind of hard to read, these are those national critical functions. You can see that they cut across lines. They're really thinking through how they want to help us. And in the future, what CISA is going to be working on, is my understanding, is more scenarios, which we've enjoyed. When I mentioned the elections, we've had tabletops. It's phenomenal to get on the phone across the country with folks in other locations and go through a tabletop, trying to figure out how you might respond to something, get the benefit of that, and then take that, and then you can distribute it in your own state, to your own locals, and try to get that benefit multiplied several times. They're also working on risk attributes and trying to figure out the highest risk and probability and what should we focus on. And then lastly, something we all share, importance of readiness as we go forward. So I think DHS is not only a great partner, but my hat's off to them, because I think they've turned some important corners and are engaged in just exactly the right way. And I'm really proud to be working with DHS. But we're doing a lot of things here in Wisconsin too. So let me tell you about what we did last year. We were one of 4 states chosen for a National Governors Association Cybersecurity Policy Academy. So for about a year, we sent folks from David Catchell's shop, and Bill Nash's shop, DOA, DET. We sent some folks from the National Guard. We sent folks from the Fusion Center. We sent folks from Wisconsin Emergency Management. And we participated in trying to figure out what we're doing, which we knew what we were doing, and bring that to the discussion, and then how we might make that better going forward. And after a year, they came away with 4 goals, and I want to share those with you because I think they're excellent. And this will sort of guide us into the future as we update our Homeland Security strategy, as we update our cybersecurity strategy, and our cyber disruption response strategy, as we continue to try and make these documents that we took a lot of time to create, we try to make them more effective. So the 4 areas, the 4 goals are: number 1, communication of cyber risks, so that individuals and corporations and entities know there is a risk and what that risk is. Number 2, develop a local engagement strategy, very important. Doesn't matter if the state protects itself or its own network, that's important, but we're as vulnerable as our weakest link. Number 3, we want to strengthen our Wisconsin Cyber Strategy Planning Work Group. This work group's been under the tutelage of David Catchell for a number of years, does a great job, but we need to make some improvements. We're going to try and do that. Maybe a little bit of manpower associated with it so that we can continue to unleash the talent that's in this group. And number 4, we want to establish a cyber workforce development pipeline. You just saw a piece of that with those young men and women who are getting those awards, and we've done some development of our own as a state over the last year, trying to develop young men and women who have an interest in the cyber arena. I'm selfish as the Adjutant General because I want them to be in all the state agencies, but I also want them to be in uniform. Now, there's no requirement to do any of that. But I will tell you, I think it's one of the best opportunities for a young man or a young woman, because you can be 18 years old graduating high school. If you choose to, you can join the National Guard. It's not full-time. Nobody's going to PCS you to Korea or someplace else around the world. You stay here in Wisconsin. You drill for a weekend a month, maybe 15, 30, maybe 40 days a year on annual training. And the state will pay for your college education. And the Army and the Air Force will give you the best cyber training that you can get anywhere in the world. And you end up with a top secret clearance. And if you imagine somebody being 22, graduating with a degree, no debt from college, a top secret clearance, there's not many companies or agencies not looking to hire that kind of talent. It's a heck of an opportunity. So there's no requirement, but I'm trying to make sure as many young men and women hear that opportunity as I can, because I think it's pretty unique. One of the biggest things the millennials talk about is the crushing student debt load that they have. And this is an opportunity for someone who's interested. And not everybody is interested, I realize. But what an opportunity. Graduate debt-free. That's a pretty cool deal. So, I want to congratulate everybody who participated at this NGA Academy. David, thank you. Mark Mitchie, thank you. A lot. Greg Engel, thank you. A lot of folks worked very, very hard. Anybody from the Fusion Center here? I don't see anybody, but they also went, and I appreciate what they did. Okay, and then I mentioned we were working on trying to develop talent, so let me tell you what the state's doing here. Under David Cadgill's tutelage, and I mention his name a lot, as you can see, we're so blessed to have David in our state. You know, most states, and we're blessed to have Bill Nash too, most states have a CIO or a CISO, and they last for maybe 12 months or 18 months, maybe they get a better job or something happens, and they're shown the door. And we've had these two gentlemen for several years now. And the longer we have them, the stronger we get in cyber, the better the leadership is, the better our functions become, our processes become, our exercises become, and we all have a chance to benefit from them. So gentlemen, thank you again for all you're doing. But they created this cyberedu.wi.gov website to tell folks about educational opportunities. If you remember, if you were here 2 years ago, we had Alan Poller here, who talked about sort of a game theory approach to developing talent. So we took them up on that. We went out to several universities and we offered them the opportunity to take this game that was developed that is designed to see if you have talent in or expertise or intellect or ability when it comes to the cyber realm. And the young men and women who took it, the ones who scored the best, we offered them an internship, paid internship. Come to work for us, come to work for DOA, come to work for other agencies in the state of Wisconsin. And we'll pay you, and we'll let you help us work our networks, and we'll expose you to state government, expose you to the military, and see if something connects there. And I am very proud to tell you that I think we had about 30 or 40 throughout the year. We did several in the Department of Military Affairs. I'm going to have lunch with them later on today to hear some of the feedback from them again. But it was really a powerful thing. Now, some of them are going to just leave this and go on and live their lives, and that's fine. But some of them are talking about, can I come back next year? What's this National Guard like? How do I do that? And that's awfully powerful for the state of Wisconsin. So, something brand new this year, and I'm very proud of Wisconsin's effort here trying to develop future talent. There are hundreds of thousands, some think millions of jobs vacant in our state and across this country. Good jobs. Jobs that pay good wages, have benefits, great opportunities. And we just don't have people to fill them. And we're going to keep trying to develop talent here in Wisconsin and try and take advantage of it. So great job, ladies and gentlemen, on what you've done. Let's talk about the future a little bit. Now, again, I'm not an expert, but I think I need to mention that 5G is coming. Whether I like it or not, I'm not sure I do, but 5G is coming. A lot of goodness coming from 5G. What I understand, a lot more speed, less latency, or low latency, which means the apps run faster is the layman's term as I understand it. And that's an awfully good thing. It will bring challenges for us. It will bring threats with it. There's a lot of things our country's going to have to unpack. It's my understanding that you can do this at different frequency ranges, and depending on what frequency range the company chooses, you get different speeds and latency, and they got to figure all that out. It's not for me to figure out. But somebody's going to have to figure out a standard, and we're not there yet. And I don't think we're at the 5G level yet. I could be wrong. Certainly somebody from industry might correct me, but my understanding is there's been a few nodes developed in a few of our biggest cities, but we certainly don't have 5G yet. But it wasn't that long ago we were talking about 4G. Anybody remember when 4G started?
Yeah.
When?
2008.
There you go, 2008. So that's 11 years ago, and that was the coolest thing in the world, right? It came out, but it took 2 or 3 years, maybe 4, before the applications really started to develop and unleash the power of 4G. And I expect the same thing will happen with 5G. It'll come online. The industry, we have the greatest industry in the world, will figure out how to do this the right way, and we'll get benefits right away. Maybe you can watch your Netflix faster on your phone or something like that. That'd be cool. But then things that we haven't even thought of are going to develop. And there'll be goodness with that, and I think there'll be some challenges with that. So we'll see what happens going forward. But this is a big issue, and I just want to highlight this. There are a lot of players when it comes to 5G. Our country's one of them. So is China. So is Europe. So I don't know how we're going to develop 5G. I don't know where the standards will come from. This will get sorted out by smart people, much smarter than me. But this is a challenge, because if you read the open press, China has a different approach than the United States has. We believe in things like the rule of law. We believe in things like if you developed it and it's your patent, you get the rights to go with that. And China's approach to intellectual property is a little bit different. And that's got to be something that gets worked out. Or all those jobs I talked about that exist today may not be there in 10 years when your children and grandchildren are looking for jobs because they may be overseas. So nobody wants to, I think, get into a protectionist lane. I certainly don't. But I think everybody wants to have standards that are understood and applied fairly across the board. And we've done that before with partners in Europe. We once were very far apart. Figured out a way to do that. I'm hopeful that our government will be successful in partnering with the government of China and other governments in Asia and Europe to have those same kind of standards, and then let the best industry thrive. And personally, I may be prejudiced, but I think nobody's going to beat American industry. It's just, they're just too talented. You go back 50 years ago, different companies, but the same kind of American ingenuity. I think that will survive for a long time. So we will see what the future holds, but I'm confident a lot of goodness and a lot of challenges. One of the big things that came to bear this year was, again, malware, encryption, ransomware affected a lot of cities. I'm sure you've heard about the cities that were affected. And two approaches to this. There were some cities that aren't as well known, and they got the infamous email that says, you know, hey, we're the bad guys, and we just locked up your stuff, and if you want it, we need a lot of money, and whatever that amount is. The city huddled and talked with their mayor and their CISO and CIO, or whatever they call them at the city level, and they decided to pay it and took the risk. And they paid it, and some of them got the key, and they got their data released and went about their business. Now that's not what a lot of the professionals recommend. They recommend you not pay that ransom. Paying ransom encourages more bad behavior, but some of the cities who didn't pay the ransom didn't necessarily have the best backup systems going, and that's a challenge, right? And then some of them, when they didn't pay the ransom, ended up paying perhaps more than they thought they would have. So this is a big challenge for small government as they approach in the future. And it used to be easy to say, well, if you just have good backups, you got no problem, right? But maybe that's not so true anymore, because the bad guys get inside your system, and it's not, hey, we broke through the door, let's do something. They're pretty sophisticated, and they know that smart guys like Bill and David are looking for them, and they just sit and listen and observe, and maybe they attach the same malware to your system as it backs up so that they've infected your backup systems. And so that's a challenge as we go forward. Again, this game keeps changing, a little bit like a basketball game. One side does something that works, the other side adjusts their defense, and then the other side adjusts their offense back and forth. And I think we're in that world right now. But it does highlight the value of good hygiene, because at least if you have a backup system, you have a much better chance as you go forward. And a lot of our cities and our local communities, and some of our states, quite frankly, some of our federal agencies, quite frankly, including the military, even organizations like the Navy and the Army, you find out that some parts in there also are pretty far behind when it comes to networking, or maybe they're using older computers or older systems. It's not just, you know, a small city. So things we need to do. We've talked about this before, the Internet of Things is coming. I don't know if it's true or not. Sorry. There we go. But I'm told 20.4 billion things, 20.4 billion things connected by 2020. They're designed to connect. They're not designed to ask you, do you want me to connect? They're designed to connect. They're going to go out there and look for the internet. Now, I'm sure that they'll build into them ways that you can say, don't connect. That's certainly where I want to live. But others, you know, again, my niece, I'm sure she wants everything to connect. She's very smart, she's very well educated, and she likes this connection idea going forward. But surely anybody in this room knows the vulnerabilities associated as we go forward with 20.4 billion, if it's only 5 billion things that are connected. And the ability for one application or virus or something to affect them all, perhaps turn them into something that they're not designed to be. Your refrigerator to something more malicious, your Siri sitting on the table for something more malicious, maybe they start to listen to you. Again, I don't want to talk about just the negatives, but this is a big deal as we go forward. The Internet of Things, again, a promise of goodness and a promise of risk. I think the goodness is that there'll be more efficiencies in our business processes. You can monitor your applications from anywhere. That's a cool thing. You can be in Tahiti and adjust your air conditioner right here in Wisconsin. That's a cool thing. Save time, save money, productivity will go up. Who doesn't want that? But the same goodness that says you can access from anywhere in the world is also a challenge, isn't it? Because somebody else can access it from anywhere in the world. And if they can access it, then maybe they can affect those business processes that are so efficient with bad intent, and that kind of undoes all that productivity we just talked about. So the scale of connections is huge. Again, lack of standards may be a problem. These are big things our country faces going forward. I do want to touch on one more thing that we did in Wisconsin that I thought was also excellent. We have a wonderful relationship with our electric utilities. You're going to hear a little bit about that today. We're going to have a panel, and it's going great. But we started reaching out to other critical infrastructure sectors. We want to build the same kind of public-private partnerships in the state of Wisconsin with all of our partners, to the extent that we can. Now, not all of our critical infrastructure makes sense to have that kind of a partnership, but the ones that do, we are going to try and develop those relationships. And here we went up to Kaukauna Utilities, and we took our National Guard team, and we brought some experts in from U.S. Cyber Command, which is the active duty combatant command that is responsible for cyber around the world. And they came and partnered with us. We went out to the utility, and we put some sensors on the networks, and we tried to figure out if anything was wrong and try to help them in making their systems better. What a wonderful thing to do. Soldiers and airmen got great training directly related to their military specialty and helped one of our utilities at no cost to the utility. Now, I don't know about you and me, or about you, but for me, I want to do that as often as I can with every partner that I can, because that's a great thing for my soldiers and airmen, and it's a great thing for Wisconsin, because if you help them get stronger, they got stronger, and that's better for our citizens. So again, my hat's off to the leadership of the Wisconsin National Guard, Wisconsin Emergency Management, just did a great job going forward. And just recently, our cyber response teams had some training they did in conjunction with WICTRA. WICTRA is here today. One of the areas there he is. Jerry Eastman is here. Former guardsman doing a great job heading up WICTRA. They have developed different ways to train, sort of training in a box. Take these, it's kind of like, I try to imagine the medical folks who experiment with diseases, right? So they go into a secure room and they put all the gear on and the gloves, and they maybe pick up the anthrax or the Black Plague, and they work on it, right? But they make sure it's protected. Well, they do the same kind of thing in a cyber box. So they bring in a box they connect, and they can train our cyber response teams with actual malware on systems. They can see what it's like, see how to solve it, practice with not only the technical folks, but the leaders in another room. And they just recently did that at the Armed Forces Readiness Center right here in Madison. And we intend to do this more across the state of Wisconsin to develop more skills, more ability, more capability, and more capacity. So Jerry Olson, or Jerry, wherever you are, there you are, thank you for your leadership. And again, David and Bill for the cyber response teams. This kind of training only makes us better and more capable of responding. I'll go back to elections again because I think it's important one more time. 2020's coming. I'm so glad Megan's on our team. This guy is going to try and mess with our election. I don't know if he's going to try and infiltrate our election systems, but he's doing a heck of a job messing with the American public on the internet, telling stories. They have some really impressive capabilities, and it's playing havoc across the United States. I'm not a guy who spends a lot of time on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or all these wonderful programs that are out there. But if you do, if you just even look on the internet when a story comes out, and those threads that come down, somebody said something, did something, and then there's somebody saying, oh, he didn't mean it, he's a nice guy, and somebody else said, no, he's really a jerk, and then they go from there, more vicious and more pointed. The chances are very good that both sides of that argument are being placed by somebody from a foreign country. Now, I'm not going to say it's Russia, but we have some indications are, right, that this has been done in the public domain, that smart people in Russia are trained to do this. And if you tend to be leaning left or leaning right in our country, both of which are fine for me, it plays right into your passion and gets people stoked and gets them angry. And that can affect turnout. It can affect how people, not how they vote, but whether they even show up to vote. It's important for us to be thinking about this as we go forward. And again, I'm proud of the Wisconsin Election Commission because they're working very hard across these things. We also, speaking of elections, have the DNC coming to Milwaukee in 2020. Next July, for 3 days, the Democratic Party will choose their candidate to run against President Trump in 2020. It's a big deal for Milwaukee. Now, I don't know what this is going to bring. It's going to bring a lot of goodness, I mean, for sure. We have a great team working this. Very proud. We are not in the lead. Department of Military Affairs, we are assisting. The U.S. Secret Service has the lead for the federal government. And of course, the city of Milwaukee has the lead for the city of Milwaukee. And great people working very hard. And we are working together, one team, to try and make sure that this event goes off flawlessly. But who knows what's going to happen when this event comes to town. So it's on our radar screen. We're working very hard to make sure that this event is one that we're very proud of, I know we will be, and showcases Milwaukee as the great city that it is next year in 2020. And I'll end with this. I've said many times at this podium at this summit that I'm not the guy that wants my refrigerator to tell me I'm out of milk or that my milk is expired. I don't need it. I'm perfectly capable of opening that door. I just don't want it. I don't have a Siri or another one of those blocks in the house where you can say, hey Siri, what's the weather? Or hey somebody else, you know, what was the score of the Brewers game last night? I don't trust them, don't want them in my house. My personal opinion. But my opinion is not going to mean a thing as this world continues to evolve and expand. I'm just one of a handful of folks who are saying, maybe we ought to go a little slower. The world will continue to expand, and what we need to do as a state, as partners, all of us, is we need to recognize the goodness that is available to us from this expansion, from this wonderful technology, from the Internet of Things, 5G. Take the goodness. Our kids will want it, our grandkids will want it, and try our best to mitigate the dangers, and when something pops up, to quickly adjust and correct it. It's going to be quite a ride, I think, over the next 20 or 30 years. If you just imagine where you were in 1990, you know, when cell phones were like a suitcase, and look at where we're at now. I have no idea what 2045 is going to look like, but it's going to be different, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to be better for us in ways that we never saw coming, but it's going to give us challenges that we never really anticipated either. And the entire presentation, I didn't even talk about the dark web, which are things that are happening that we don't even really know about. So, with that, I will thank you for all you do. We have a choice. We can work together, or we can fail separately. And I don't know about you, but I'm all in working together. So thanks for being here. Let's get on to much better speakers, and have a great day.